My account is about spotting covert narcissism, and I think this is one of the most interesting cases that I've seen and has been controversial. I've got a lot of pushback, and this is about whether or not Justin Baldoni is a covert narcissist and what that means. I've said that with covert narcissists, you have to watch them very close and look for them to slip up. And I've talked about my ex-wife, and she was very good at it. She would be in a conversation and all of a sudden slip in something that was taking a shot at me, and I would think, wow, did I just see what I thought I saw? That's how narcissists work. And a lot of times when they get to really talking, that's when that facade starts to break a little bit. And I think that's what we have here with Justin Baldoni. There's been a few things that have been said about all three actresses on It Ends With Us, Justin Baldoni being inappropriate and even sexual harassment. But I want to focus on one thing, and some of you might call it overanalyzing, but I think it's important to look at it in its entirety and in its focus, and that is what Jenny Slate said about him. And I've talked about Jenny Slate before, and I've kind of given an inventory of some of her impressions. But one thing she said specifically, she said that he told her that it's okay because my wife is here, but you look sexy in that outfit. To me, this is a very important piece of evidence, but it's also important to ask if Jenny is actually being truthful. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. She may not be perfect, but I don't see her as a liar. And this is so specific that I just don't see it. And particularly when you add up that others are saying similar things, um, to me, you got to believe a woman, particularly when she's talking about sexual harassment. And I believe her here. So then what does this mean? Is it a big deal? And I would say it is a big deal. Jenny Slate is Justin Baldoni's subordinate in this business. And you just don't say that you look sexy in a business environment, in a professional environment. I mean, think about that in a normal business environment. A boss telling a subordinate that you look sexy. It's a big deal. If you look at it a different way and what sexy means, he's basically saying, I find you sexually attractive. That's a big deal. That is, to me, an exertion of masculine power on both ends. Masculine power to her, reducing her to something physical outside of her character and the art that she's producing. And the other masculine power here is, he says, my wife is here. And I don't know if that means that she is right there listening or not. I mean, she could easily find out that this was said, but this is degrading to his wife. And it's really no excuse to say this because, my wife is here. In fact, it makes it worse. In fact, sexy is something that should be reserved for your wife. If you are married, you should not be saying that. It's really reserved for a romantic type engagement, that particular word. So the question is this narcissistic or just someone that is being inappropriate? And I would say it is narcissistic. A narcissist is someone that looks to elevate themselves while degrading another person. And that's what's happening here, in my opinion. He's trying to make it out like, look at me, I'm complimenting a woman, aren't I great and aren't I great advocate and feminist? But at the same time, he's low-key degrading her. He is reducing her to her physicality and not acknowledging her character or what they're doing. Now, a more appropriate thing to say would be, you're looking very appropriate in that costume that's been set up for the scene. It looks good. So the other question is, am I overanalyzing? And I would say no. As someone that has a pretty personal experience with what it's like to be an advocate and an understanding of feminism, this is something that's far from these type of people's mind. They are thinking all the time about a woman's comfort because they know that women are subjected to uncomfortable experiences by men on a regular basis. So you think about that in a very big way. So this idea that you would tell a subordinate that they're sexy is so far away from what an advocate would say. And knowing that position, you can kind of calibrate whether or not this other man is truly an advocate. And I would say no, from all the evidence that I've just discussed. This is someone that, as Jenny Slate has said, she was calling him a fraud and a fake feminist. And that's really a decent point. Assuming she's telling the truth, assuming all these women are telling the truth, which, maybe it's not particularly really, really dramatic, like hitting on them or something, but this is enough. This is enough to show that he is not thinking in terms of an advocate, and he has a regular behavior not thinking like an advocate. So this is a fake. This is someone that has created a facade around feminism and being an advocate. He's made a lot of money through his podcasts and other things. But when push comes to shove, when there is significant real situations, it slips out what his real personality is. And I see a narcissist, and maybe one of the worst kinds of narcissists, where they have this whole facade around being a woman's advocate, and then turn around on a regular basis and do just the opposite. That is one of the worst kinds of narcissists. That big kind of fake. They're very dangerous because you don't know what they're going to do in relation to what they actually say. One final point, and this is an important one, is Justin Baldoni said that none of this happened. He said that there was no sexual harassment, there was no inappropriate behavior, that essentially these women are lying, which is not uncommon for what women deal with, having this stuff denied and saying it didn't happen. This is gaslighting. So this is not only sexually harassing, but then gaslighting and denying when you're done. This is the absolute opposite of what an advocate does. A normal advocate would say, "Oh, I didn't know that was sexually harassing or made you uncomfortable, and I'm sorry about that, and it will never happen again." How he's behaving, assuming Jenny is telling the truth, is very much showing his facade, very much showing that he is a faux advocate, like Jenny says.